I always believed effort spoke louder than noise, and I said that to myself every morning. Just do the work, I whispered while logging in, and they'll see. Ethan used to joke, "You're the reliable one," and Maya would add, "The quiet ones carry teams." I believed them. I trusted this place. I trusted the people. The meeting room felt colder than usual. David said, "Let's review the Atlas project." I straightened my notes and waited. Lauren smiled and said, "Sure, I'll start." She clicked her slides and looked at me. Some parts were disappointing. I blinked. "Which parts?" I asked. She laughed. "The parts you handled. Few people shifted." David cleared his throat and said nothing. I said, "I followed the brief you approved." Lauren replied, "You followed something, just not quality." My face burned. "I worked weekends," I said. She shrugged. "Effort isn't impact." I looked at David. "Can you clarify?" He stared at the table. "Let Lauren finish," he said softly. Lauren continued, "Deadlines slipped because I had to fix errors." I said, "That's not true." She leaned closer. "Are you calling me a liar?" The room went silent. Ethan avoided me. Maya's pen stopped moving. I said, "I'm saying I did the work alone." Lauren smiled. "And that's the problem. If there was feedback, why not tell me before this?" Lauren said, "Feedback is happening now." David nodded. "Let's keep it professional." I laughed once, sharp. "Public shaming is professional?" David finally looked up. "This isn't the time." I felt stupid for trusting him. Lauren said, "We need accountability," I said. "Then check the commits." She waved a hand. "Technicalities." Someone coughed. I heard my own voice shaking. "You're blaming me to look good," Lauren replied. "I don't need help looking good." A few smiles appeared. I stopped talking. David closed the laptop. "We'll revisit later." Lauren packed her bag and said, "Happy to help you improve." I nodded because words wouldn't come. As people stood, Maya whispered, "I'm sorry." Ethan said, "It'll blow over." I smiled and said, "Yeah." In the hallway, Lauren passed me. "Don't take it personally," she said. I answered, "You made it personal." "Maybe you're not cut out for this pace." I watched her walk away. My chest felt hollow. I replayed every sentence. I heard the laughs. I saw David's silence at my desk. I stared at the screen. "You okay?" Maya asked. I said, "Fine." "She's intense," he said. I replied, "So is betrayal." He winced and left. I typed nothing. I thought, if loyalty mattered, he would have spoken. When the day ended, David said, "Let's talk later." I said, "There's nothing to explain." He frowned. "Don't be dramatic." I stood up. "I wasn't dramatic in there," I said. He didn't respond. I walked out smiling. Inside, something broke. Clean and final. In the elevator, my reflection stared back. "Hold it together," I told myself. A stranger asked, "Rough meeting?" I said, "Productive," and hated the lie. Outside, my phone buzzed. Mom texted, "How was work?" I typed, "Busy." I deleted it. "I'm tired," I sent. On the bus, 2 coworkers laughed behind me. "She roasted him," one said. "He didn't fight back," said another. I turned and asked, "Anything else?" They froze. "No," they said together. I faced forward and counted breaths. "You did your best," I murmured. "Your best wasn't enough," another voice answered. At home, I dropped my bag. "What now?" I asked the room. The room said nothing. I opened my laptop and reread Lauren's messages. "Can you revise?" "Quick fix, thanks," I said. "You knew." Imagine David replying. I should have spoken. He never did. I stood by the window and said, "I won't beg." My hands shook, but my voice stayed firm. "I won't let this define me." The words felt thin, but they were mine. I whispered, "Tomorrow changes something." And for the first time all day, I believed it. I promised myself, speak once more, then paused, corrected it, and said, "No, choose yourself." And the promise finally felt honest. That thought steadied my steps. I sat at my desk and pretended to work. You good? Someone whispered behind me. I nodded and said, yeah. Keys clicked. Chairs rolled. I heard my name, then laughter. She didn't have to do him like that, a voice said. Another replied he should have defended himself. I stared at my screen and muttered, I tried. Lauren walked past and smiled. Morning, she said, light and cheerful. I answered morning, even though my chest hurt. She stopped and added, let me know if you need help fixing things. I said, I don't. She laughed softly and walked away. That laugh stayed with me longer than her insults. Maya leaned over the divider. Do you want coffee? She asked. I said, I'm fine. My voice cracked. She frowned. You don't sound fine, I whispered. Please don't. She nodded and said, I'm here. I couldn't look at her. I stood and walked to David's office. Do you have a minute? Wait, he said. Make it quick. I closed the door. That meeting wasn't fair, I said. He leaned back. Lauren was giving feedback. I replied. She humiliated me. Sighed. You're taking it personally, I asked. How else should I take it? He said, this is business. I said, you let her blame me for her choices. He replied, let's not point fingers. I laughed once. You're pointing at me, kept his voice calm. I need harmony, I said, at my expense. He checked his phone. We'll address it later, I asked. When? He said, not now. I realized I was invisible. I left his office shaking. He didn't even listen, I told myself. Maybe you deserved it, another voice answered. I sat down and stared at the wall. Stop, I whispered. You did the work. My hands trembled. Then why didn't he say it? I asked myself. The silence replied. Maya texted, lunch? I typed can't. She came anyway. You don't have to carry this alone, she said. I tried to speak, but my throat tightened. She said, breathe. I nodded. They shouldn't treat you like that, she added. I shrugged. Maybe I let them. She shook her head. No. Lauren passed again and said, everything okay? I said, you know it isn't. She smiled. Work can be tough, I said. You made it tough. Then get tougher. She walked away. I whispered, or get out. By 5. My head pounded. Ethan stopped by. Don't let it get to you, he said. I asked, why didn't you say anything? He looked away. I needed this job. I nodded. So did I, he said. It's complicated, I replied. It's cowardice. He left without answering. On the bus home, I replayed everything. You're overreacting, David said in my head. You're weak, Lauren echoed. I pressed my palms together and said, I'm tired. At home, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the floor. What did I do wrong? I asked the ceiling. The ceiling stayed quiet. My phone buzzed. Maya texted, checking on you. I typed, thanks. I deleted a longer message. I opened my laptop and read old emails. Great job, David once wrote. I laughed bitterly. Lies last, I said. I imagined quitting. Don't be dramatic, I told myself. Then I pictured another meeting. My stomach dropped. I whispered, I don't belong here. The words scared me, but they felt true. I stood and looked at myself in the mirror. You're not worthless, I said. My reflection didn't argue. I sat on the bed and admitted, I can't do this forever. Yes, the thought settled in. Maybe leaving isn't failure, I said. For the first time, quitting didn't feel like giving up. It felt like breathing. I started noticing things I used to ignore. Lauren already sent the update, someone said near the printer. I frowned. I sent that, I whispered. Another voice replied, she rewrote it. I sat down and said, of course she did. My silence suddenly felt loud. At lunch, 2 co-workers talked behind me. She's sharp, one said. Yeah, but he's slow, the other answered. I turned and asked, slow? At what? They froze. Nothing, one said. I smiled and replied, say it next time. They left quickly. My hands shook, but my mind cleared. I opened old messages. Nice recovery, David had written after Lauren missed a deadline. I said, recovery from what? I scrolled further. Lauren flagged concerns, another email said. I whispered, concerns you never asked me about. The pattern hurt more than the truth. Ethan sat beside me later. You seem off, he said. I answered, did she talk about me before the meeting? He hesitated. Sometimes, I pressed. How long? He sighed. Months. My chest tightened. Why didn't you tell me? He said, I didn't want to be next. I nodded. So you watched, he said. It wasn't personal, I replied. It was my career. He rubbed his neck. She controls the room, I said, only because we let her. He looked down. I needed the paycheck. I stood up. So did I, he whispered. I'm sorry, he said. I believe you. Later, Lauren stopped by. Any progress? She asked. I said, you mean on my reputation? She laughed. You're sensitive, I replied. You're calculated. Her smile faded. Careful, she said. I leaned back. I am. She walked away without another word. I replayed conversations in my head. Just keep your head down, Maya once said. Don't rock the boat, David often said. I whispered, the boat is sinking. I saw myself nodding, agreeing, absorbing blame. I trained them to do this, I admitted. Maya found me by the stairs. You're quiet, she said. I answered, I'm thinking, she asked, about leaving. I blinked. Did I say that? She smiled sadly. You didn't have to. I said, I don't know if I should fight, she replied, or if you should survive. I nodded. At my desk, I typed notes I never planned to send. Dates, messages, names, I muttered. What would you do? I asked myself. One voice said, expose them. Another said, protect yourself. I closed the file. Revenge feels loud, I said. Dignity feels quiet. Ethan messaged, you okay? I typed, I see it now, he replied. See what? I answered, the truth. He didn't respond. I smiled faintly. Truth makes people uncomfortable, I said. David called out, everything on track? I looked up. Depends who's asking, he frowned. Let's stay focused. I replied, I am. He walked away annoyed. I felt lighter. You don't control me, I whispered. On the way home, I practiced words. I deserve respect. I won't beg. I won't explain. Each sentence felt stronger. I thought about staying and fighting. I thought about leaving clean. Which one keeps me whole? I asked. At home, I wrote a list. Reasons to stay. I stopped at one. Reasons to leave. I filled the page. I laughed softly. Kindness isn't weakness, I said. Silence is. I closed the notebook and decided, whatever happens next, I told myself, will be my choice. It was past midnight when I opened my laptop. Just right, I told myself. The cursor blinked like it was waiting. Dear David, I typed, then deleted it. No, I said, this isn't for him. I tried again. This letter serves as notice. Hands shook, but my head felt clear. I resign, I whispered, and the word felt heavy and clean. You're overreacting, I said out loud. Then I answered myself, no, I'm done. I remembered late nights. Just one more fix, David used to say. You're reliable, Lauren once said, smiling while I stayed late. I typed, I have given my best, and paused. You gave everything, I corrected. I leaned back and said, remember why you came here. I remembered the interview. We value people, David said back then. We grow together, Lauren added. I laughed softly. That was a lie, I said. My fingers moved faster. This environment no longer aligns with my values. I nodded. That's true, I whispered. Missed birthdays. Missed weekends. I typed, I sacrifice time and trust. I stopped. Don't beg, I warned myself. I deleted a paragraph and said, short and final. I wrote, my last day will be 2 weeks from today. Stared at it. No, I said, make it sooner. Changed it to 1 week. My chest loosened. I read the letter aloud. Professional.com/honest, I said. Not angry, I added. I signed my name and closed the laptop. You chose yourself, I told the darkroom. My phone buzzed. Maya texted, You awake? I replied, Yeah. She wrote, Whatever you decide, I support you. I typed thank you and meant it. Morning came fast. I dressed slowly and said, This is real. On the bus, I reread the letter. No turning back, I whispered. At the office, Lauren waved. Morning, she said. I answered morning and felt nothing. That scared me more than anger. I knocked on David's door. Got a minute? I asked. He smiled. Sure. I sat down and slid the paper across his desk. What's this? He asked. I said, My resignation. His smile dropped. That's sudden, he said. I replied, It isn't. He leaned forward. We can talk this out. I shook my head. We already did, he said. Don't make emotional decisions, I answered. This is the calmest I've felt. He scanned the letter. Is this about the meeting? I said it's about the silence. He sighed. Lauren didn't mean harm, I replied. You did? Lauren appeared at the door. Everything okay? She asked. David said he's resigning. She blinked. Seriously? I looked at her. Yes. She crossed her arms. Over feedback, I said, over disrespect. She rolled her eyes. That's dramatic. I smiled. So is staying. David said, Think about your future. Wait. I stood up. I am, Lauren scoffed. Good luck out there, I met her gaze. I don't need luck. She looked annoyed. Not sorry. That told me everything. At my desk, I packed quietly. Ethan watched. You're really leaving? He asked. I said yes. He swallowed. I wish I could, I replied. You can. Maya hugged me and whispered, I'm proud of you, I said. I'm scared. She smiled. That means it matters. As I walked out, David called my name. You're making a mistake, he said. I turned. No, I answered. I'm correcting one. The elevator doors closed. My heart raced. Breathe, I told myself. Outside, the air felt lighter. I stood on the sidewalk and laughed once, shaky but free. You didn't lose, I said. You chose. Fear sat beside relief, but it didn't win. I walked forward and whispered, This is power, and for the first time, I believed it without doubt. The apartment was too quiet. I said, So this is unemployed? The room didn't answer. My phone stayed silent. I stared at it and asked, Was I brave or just stupid? I paced and said, You quit without a plan. Then I replied, You quit with dignity. Both felt true. Claire called that afternoon. How are you? She asked. I laughed. Great, I said. She paused. Try again, sighed. I'm scared, she said. Come over. I went. She handed me tea and said, Talk, I said. I don't have a job. She replied, You have self-respect. I shook my head. That doesn't pay rent, she smiled. It pays sanity. I sat on her couch and said, What if I ruined everything? She asked, Did they respect you? I answered, No, she said. Then you saved something. I told her I'd keep hearing their voices. She asked, Whose? I said, Lauren, David, everyone. She leaned closer. And your voice. I whispered. I ignored it. Not anymore. I felt tears rise. I let them treat me like I was small. She said, Because you were kind. I said, They called it weak. She replied, They were wrong. That night I searched for therapists. I muttered, I should have done this earlier. The therapist asked on the phone, Why now? I said, Because I broke. She replied, Or because you woke up. I booked the session in therapy. She asked, What do you feel? I said, Angry, then ashamed. Relieved, she said. Pick one. I answered, Tired. She nodded. Of what? I said, Proving I deserve respect. She wrote something down and said, Who taught you that? I laughed bitterly. Work. Days passed slowly. I checked job boards and closed them. Too soon, I told myself. I opened my laptop and said, "Try freelancing." I sent one message. Just one, I promised. The reply came hours later. "Can you start Monday?" I whispered, "Yes." My chest loosened. Claire texted, "Any news?" I replied, "I got a small gig." She sent, "Proud of you." I stared at the screen and said, "Don't cry." I cried anyway. Some mornings, I woke up panicked. "You messed up," I told myself. Other mornings, I said, "You escaped." I made lists. Bills, goals, boundaries, I added. Never again. It felt important. In my second therapy session, she asked, "What would you tell your past self?" I said, "Speak sooner." She asked, "Anything else?" I said, "Leave earlier." She smiled. "Good," I added. "Trust yourself." My voice didn't shake. I met a client over video. He said, "Your work looks solid." I replied, "Thank you." He added, "Can you handle pressure?" I smiled slightly. "Yes," I said, and meant it. When the call ended, I said, "You're still capable." Saying it out loud mattered. One night I said, "I miss the routine." Then I corrected myself. "I miss feeling useful." I stood and said, "You are useful." The mirror didn't argue. Claire visited again. "You look lighter," she said. I replied, "I still hurt." She nodded. "Healing isn't clean," I said. "I thought survival was loud." She smiled. "It's not," I finished. "It's persistent." She raised her cup. "To persistence." I clinked mine and said, "To rebuilding." Before bed, I whispered, "I didn't fail." The words settled slowly. "I changed," I added. The silence felt softer now. I lay down and said, "Tomorrow, keep going." Wasn't hope yet, but it was enough. The first message came from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Sam from your old floor," it read. I stared and replied, "Hi." Sam wrote, "Things are rough here," I asked. "How rough?" He answered, "Deadlines missed. Clients angry." I put the phone down and said, "I'm not surprised." Later that day, Maya called. "Have you heard?" she asked. I said, "About what?" She lowered her voice. "Lauren's project is failing." I leaned back. "Is it?" She replied, "Yes. Leadership is asking questions." I closed my eyes. "I hope they fix it," I said. She paused. "You don't sound happy," I answered. "I'm not celebrating." That night, Ethan texted, "Can we meet?" I hesitated, then replied, "Coffee tomorrow." When I arrived, he looked tired. "You look different," he said. I smiled. Less scared. He laughed weakly. "I wish I could say the same." I asked, "What's happening?" He stirred his cup. "Everything's falling apart," he said. "Lauren can't keep up." I replied, "She never did." He nodded. "She blamed you for months." I said, "I know." He looked at me. "Now they see it?" I asked. "And David?" He sighed. "Under pressure. Upper management is watching." Felt a strange calm. "Actions echo," I said quietly. Ethan leaned closer. "People miss you." I blinked. "They do?" He nodded. "You kept things running." I laughed softly. "I thought I was invisible," he said. "You were quiet, not invisible." I looked out the window. "Quiet people hold buildings up." He nodded. "And when they leave?" I finished. "Cracks show," he said. "Morale is gone." Asked, "Because of me?" He shook his head. "Because the truth showed up." I felt sadness rise. "I didn't want them to fail," he replied. "You didn't make them fail," I said. "I know." Saying it felt important. After coffee, I walked home and said, "This is karma." Then I corrected myself. "No, this is consequence." My phone buzzed again. David emailed. "Hope you're well," it began. I scoffed. "Now, I read on. We may need your insight," I replied. "I'm unavailable." My hands didn't shake. Maya texted later. "Lauren snapped at the team today." I typed, "I'm sorry." She sent. She never says that. I stared at the screen and whispered, I did. The difference mattered in therapy. I said, they're struggling, she asked. How do you feel? I answered, calm. She smiled. No guilt. I said, some? She asked, why? I replied, I covered for them. And now? I said, I'm done carrying it. That evening, Ethan called again. They asked about you in the meeting, he said. I asked, what did they say? He replied, that losing you hurt the team. I laughed once. Funny timing, he said. They regret it. Answered, regret doesn't rewind. He hesitated. Lauren asked if you'd come back. I stopped walking. No, I said simply. He sighed. I figured, I added, I hope she learns, he replied. I think she is. I looked at the sky. Learning hurts. At home, I opened my laptop and worked on a client project. The client messaged, great progress. I replied, thank you. I felt grounded. Focus here, I told myself. The past felt farther away. Another message came from Sam. David's stressed, he wrote. I replied, that's unfortunate. He added, people are finally speaking up. I smiled faintly. Good. I sat quietly and said, I didn't plan revenge. The room listened. I've planned survival. I remembered wanting them to understand. They understand now, I said. Without me, later I told Claire, they're unraveling. She asked, how do you feel? I said, at peace. She smiled. That's growth, I nodded. I didn't need to win, she asked. Then what did you need? I answered, to leave. Before bed, I whispered, life handles things. The words felt true. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I breathed. For the first time, that was enough for me. Lauren's message arrived at noon. Can we talk? It said. I stared at it and replied, about what? She answered, I owe you an apology. I waited, then typed, coffee. 1 hour. I told myself, this is for closure, not for her. When I walked in, she stood up fast. Thanks for coming, she said. I sat and replied, say what you need to say. 8. You're different, I said. I'm free. She forced a smile. I didn't mean to hurt you, I asked. Then why did you? She sighed. I was under pressure, I said. So was I, she added. I had to protect my position. I leaned forward. By sacrificing mine? She frowned. It wasn't personal, I answered. You said my name. Her hands tightened around her cup. She said, I pushed you because you're capable. I shook my head. You humiliated me because you could, she whispered. I didn't think you'd quit. I replied, that's the problem. She looked confused. What problem? I said, you thought I'd stay quiet. Lauren straightened. I built that team, I said, on borrowed strength. You think you're better than me now? I smiled slightly. I think I respect myself, she scoffed. You're dramatic, I answered. You're defensive. She leaned closer. They're blaming me now, I said. That's not my concern, her voice cracked. David's panicking, I replied. He should. She whispered, I'm losing control. I nodded. I know the feeling. She took a breath. I'm sorry, she said again. I asked, for what? She hesitated. For how it looked. I shook my head. Try again. Her eyes filled. For hurting you? I paused. You're closer, she said. I was afraid you'd outshine me. Said you should have been afraid of your choices. Tears fell. I didn't expect this, she said. I replied, neither did I in that meeting. She flinched. She reached for my hand. I pulled back. Don't, I said calmly. She whispered, what do you want? I answered, nothing. She looked stunned. Not even an apology? I said, you gave one, she asked. Isn't it enough? I replied, no. Lauren's voice rose. You're enjoying this? I shook my head. I'm finished with it. She snapped, you ruined me. I answered, you ruined yourself. Silence fell heavy between us. She said, say you forgive me. I looked at her and said, I don't forgive you. Her face collapsed. Then why come? she asked. I replied, to tell you the truth, she whispered, which is... I said, you don't get closure from me. She wiped her face. I made you small. I nodded. You tried? She asked. And now? I said, now I leave, she said, just like that. I stood, just like that. Lauren stood too. I never thought you'd stand up to me. I looked her in the eye. I didn't either. She laughed bitterly. You won. I shook my head. This isn't a competition? She asked. Then what is it? I answered, an ending. As I walked toward the door, she said, wait. I turned. She whispered, I'm scared, I replied. So was I. She said, what should I do? I thought for a second. Listen, I said, when someone is quiet. I stepped outside and breathed in deeply. My phone buzzed, but I didn't check it. You didn't fix her, I told myself. You freed yourself. The weight I carried for months was gone. I walked down the street and said, no anger, no revenge. Each step felt steady. Just clarity, I added. I realized I didn't need forgiveness to move forward. I needed truth. I whispered, power isn't loud. The city moved around me. It's calm, I said. I kept walking, lighter than I'd been in years, knowing I didn't lose anything that mattered. I didn't owe anyone my silence ever again. My mornings sound different now. What's the plan? I ask myself. I answer, work that respects me. My client calls and says, we like your pace. I reply, I said it. He laughs. Fair. I smile and think, boundaries work. A junior freelancer messages me. Can I ask something? I type ask. She says, how do you speak up? I pause and reply, you practice. She asks, what if they don't listen? I answer, then you listen to yourself, sending that feels right. During a call, a client interrupts me. I say, let me finish. He says, sorry. I continue calmly. After I whispered, that was new. I don't feel guilty. I feel steady. This is growth, I tell myself. I meet a group online to mentor newcomers. One says, I hate conflict. I reply, so did I. Another asks, did it cost you? I say yes. Then I add, it saved me. They nod. I remember my old self sitting quietly. I see you, I think Claire calls. You sound confident, she says. I answer, I learned. She asks, from pain? I say, from patterns. She laughs softly. Proud of you, I reply, me too. That still feels strange. Ethan texts unexpectedly. Heard the news? I ask. Which part? He writes, David resigned. I stare and say, okay. He adds, Lauren was demoted. I breathe out. I feel nothing, I type. He replies, that's healthy. I nod at the screen. Closure, I whisper. Later, Maya calls. It's official, she says. I ask, how are you? She answers, relieved. I say, me too. She laughs. You were right, I reply, about leaving, she says. About yourself? That lands deeper. I think back and say, I used to measure myself by their reactions. Now I say, I measure peace. I open my notebook and write non-negotiables. I read them aloud. Respect, clarity, time. I add, voice. Saying it feels strong. A client pushes a deadline. I respond, that won't work. He says, we'll adjust. I grin. Imagine that, I tell myself. No apology follows. No explanation needed. This is who I am now, I say quietly. In a mentoring session, someone asks, do you forgive them? I answer, I release them. They ask, what's the difference? I say, one is for them. One is for me. The room goes quiet. I feel my voice hold at night. Doubt still visits. What if it was luck? It asks. I answer, I show up. Doubt says, what if you fail? I reply, I recover. The conversation ends quicker now. I get an email from a former client. We'd like to expand, it reads. I type, let's discuss terms. My hands don't shake. I remember how they used to. You're safe, I tell myself. Walking outside, I hear laughter from a bar. I think of office hallways and swallowed words. Not anymore, I say. My steps feel even. My breath stays calm. They can't touch me, I whisper. Not with pride, but with certainty. Before bed, I talk to my reflection. You're not bitter, I say. You're built. Smile. Pain didn't harden you, I add. It shaped you. The mirror agrees. I lie down and say, my voice is firm. Don't rehearse arguments anymore. I don't shrink sentences. I belong where I'm heard, I whisper. Sleep comes easily. Tomorrow waits, not as a threat, but as space. I breathe and say, I'm ready. The past feels distant, not erased, just finished. I close my eyes, knowing nothing they do defines me now, and nothing they say ever will again. I wake up and say, you made it. The room feels calm. I add, not past it, but through it. I remember that meeting and say, they tried to shrink you. I answer myself, they failed. Claire texts, big day. I reply, just another. She writes, that's growth. I smile and say it is. I don't need milestones anymore. I need steadiness. I open my laptop and tell myself, work first, fear later. A client messages, can you lead the call? I answer yes.
Yes.
During the call, I speak clearly. No one interrupts me. When they do, I say, let me finish. They listen. I end the call and whisper, you earned this. Maya calls. I saw your post, she says. I ask, which one? She laughs. The one about boundaries, I reply. I finally learned. She says, you sound strong. I answer, I am. I think about Lauren and say, I don't hate you. I think about David and add, I don't forgive you. The space between those thoughts feels clean. I don't owe either of you anything, I say. Ethan texts proud of you. I type thank you. I don't add more. The past doesn't need footnotes. I remember sitting silent beside him and say, we all choose. I chose myself. I talk to my reflection. You were humiliated, I say. You survived, I answer. You were quiet, I add. You're heard now. My voice doesn't crack. In a mentoring session, someone asks, how did you get over it? I reply, I didn't. They look confused. I explain, I carried it until it changed me. They nod. So it still hurts? I say, sometimes. Then I add, it doesn't control me. I walk outside and feel the air. You're free, I tell myself. Not from work, not from effort, but from shame. That was the weight, I say. Not the job. I remember nights of doubt and say, you questioned everything. I remember mornings of resolve and say, you answered yourself. The balance matters. Claire calls again. Dinner? She asks. I reply yes. She says same place. I answer, somewhere new. She laughs. Of course, at dinner she asks, do you miss it? I think and say, I miss who I thought I was becoming. She nods. And now? I reply, I'm becoming myself. She raises her glass. To that, I clink mine. To choosing. Later alone, I open the old notebook. I read the first page. Reasons to leave. I turn to the last. Reasons to stay. It's blank. I smile and close it. You don't need lists anymore, I say. I think about winning and say, this wasn't a battle. I think about revenge and add, this wasn't a plan. I sit with the truth. I refuse to be shamed again. The words feel solid. Before sleep, doubt whispers, what if it happens again? I answer, then I'll speak sooner. Doubt asks, what if you're wrong? I reply, then I'll adjust. The exchange ends. I lie down and say, you didn't destroy anyone. I pause. You didn't need to. I breathe out. You reclaimed yourself. It feels like the ending. Tomorrow isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. I whisper, walk forward. Don't look back. The past stays where it belongs. I close my eyes, grounded, confident, and free, knowing the job was never the cage. And I was never broken, only waiting to choose myself fully at last.